Right, let's jump straight into this explainer and unpack the massive new tax notifications taking effect in Bangladesh on June 2nd, 2025. If you're involved in manufacturing or importing in the region, the landscape is about to shift in a huge way. And honestly, understanding these new rules is going to be absolutely critical to your strategy moving forward.
So, you're planning to set up a factory in Bangladesh this year? Well, you're definitely going to want to pay close attention. The overarching theme of these new directives is pretty clear. The government is making a highly aggressive push for local manufacturing and true self-sufficiency. They're basically rolling out the red carpet for builders with some incredible financial incentives. But, as you'll see, that red carpet comes with some very strict, highly monitored strings attached.
Here's exactly how we're breaking it down today so you don't get lost in the bureaucratic jargon. First, the broad tax incentives for 2025 and 2026. Then, capital machinery import benefits. Next, we'll hit raw material tariff concessions, followed by a fascinating look at boosting local e-bike production. And finally, we'll wrap up with the strict compliance and verification rules. All right, kicking things off with part one, the overarching tax incentives for 2025 and 2026. Look, before you can calculate a single dollar of savings, you've got to meet two foundational definitions. First up, you need to be an industrial IRC holder, meaning your company holds an updated industrial consumer import registration certificate. Second, and this is equally important, you have to be VAT compliant. That means your entity is electronically filing those regular 13-digit VAT returns without fail. You literally have to meet both of these definitions to unlock any of the tax benefits we're about to discuss. No exceptions. Moving right along to part two, bringing in the big guns. Let's look at the capital machinery import benefits. And here is where it gets really exciting. There is a massive discount waiting for compliant businesses, a flat 1% customs duty on importing capital machinery and essential parts. Think about that for a second. If you're building out a massive industrial plant, bringing down the import duty on your heavy machinery to just 1%, that is an absolute game changer for your initial capital expenditure. But there are guardrails. You've got to be aware of the restrictions. Say you're a commercial importer, bringing in mixed loads in a single shipment. You can't just sneak in endless spare parts under that 1% banner. They cap it strictly at a maximum of 10% of the machinery's net weight. It's a very precise, deliberate measure to make sure the benefit is used for actual factory building, not just stockpiling inventory on the cheap. The government clearly understands real-world logistics, right? Building a factory takes a long time. So they give you a pretty generous 24-month window from the date of your first bill of entry to bring in your machinery across multiple shipments. And if you face delays, no panic, just yet, the Customs Commissioner can grant an extension of up to 12 months. Still facing issues after that? The National Board of Revenue can actually grant a second extension for up to another 12 months, assuming your case is justified. Okay, Section 3. Let's zoom in a bit from the heavy machinery to the raw materials feeding those machines. Notice how they've strategically tiered these tariffs. Foundational inputs are kept incredibly low. Down at that sweet 1% duty, you've got essentials like crude palm oil for refineries, plus inputs for optical fiber and textile yarns. Move a step up to 5%, and you find materials like bone ash for ceramics, rubber process oil for tires, and flat-rolled steel for transformers. At the 10% tier, we see things like bulk milk for food processing and paraffin wax. The entire structure clearly favors basic industrial building blocks. Now, as we move up those tiers, watch how the targeted industries shift. The 15% duty hits stuff like cement clinkers and TV panels. At 25%, we're looking at soap noodles and marble tiles. But check this out. Notice how tobacco products face the absolute heaviest burden. Cigarette paper isn't just hit with a 25% customs duty, it's slapped with a massive 100% supplementary duty on top of it. This brilliantly maps out the government's exact industrial priorities and their clear deterrents. All right, part 4. This is an absolutely fascinating deep dive into Bangladesh's ambitions for electric vehicles. The policy splits the incentives really cleanly here. You get that 1% customs duty to bring in the tools and capital machinery, but it's a 5% customs duty to bring in the raw materials, the copper, steel, and plastics, to actually build the two-wheelers. The intent is obvious. They want you to build the capability locally, not just import parts and snap them together like a Lego kit. And they are dead serious about local value addition. You absolutely cannot just import finished electronic components. Your factory has to be physically equipped to manufacture printed circuit boards in-house.
That means taking raw materials through drilling, routing, exposing, automated optical inspection, and surface mounting technology. The whole shebang. The physical mechanics are just as strict. Take the electric motor stator, for example. You can't just buy it pre-finished. You literally have to run the machines to insert the glass paper, wind the copper wire, form it, and dry the varnish right there on your own factory floor. Rotor manufacturing? Same rigorous story. To qualify, your facility has to perform straight machining, utilize power presses, and execute intricate die casting and milling. They are actively forcing the transfer of heavy manufacturing skills directly into the local workforce. And beyond the electronics and motors, the operational mandates are just immense. You've got to have an in-house paint shop specifically for electrodeposition and primer coating. You need CNC machines to bend and weld the metal tubes for the bike's frame. You even have to locally manufacture components like shock absorbers and handlebars. Plus, you need a dedicated testing lab for quality control and strict environmental clearances for handling those batteries. It's an incredibly comprehensive end-to-end manufacturing ecosystem. Which brings us to our fifth and final section, strict compliance and verification. Because there's a catch to all these benefits, and it's a big one. The verification timeline proves they aren't messing around. The exact moment your last shipment of machinery clears, the clock starts ticking. Within 6 months, a specialized engineering expert, and it has to be someone specifically from a mechanical, electrical, or chemical engineering department of a public university, must physically inspect your factory to verify the machinery is actually installed and functioning. You can get an extension if the expert is delayed, sure, but that physical audit, completely unavoidable. And check out this financial lock-in for commercial importers. While you're waiting for that final compliance check to clear, you have to submit an unconditional bank guarantee covering the exact difference in taxes. You are essentially locking up your cash to prove you aren't going to just flip the imported machinery on the side for a quick profit. Because the days of slipping things past with just a dusty paper ledger, completely over. Customs officers won't just take your word for it anymore. They will digitally cross-check your 13-digit VAT return on the NBR system or the VAT online system in real time before releasing any shipments. If they don't see that mandatory electronic footprint of your prior month's return, your shipment stays sitting at the port. The bottom line is zero tolerance. The documents state crystal clearly that if there is any documented proof or specific complaint that a factory is abusing these concessions, all of those tax breaks will be instantly frozen pending a full investigation by the authorities. Which really leaves us with one massive question. Before you go and map out that new e-bike assembly line or import heavy machinery under that 1% break, ask yourself honestly, are your compliance books genuinely ready for a university expert and the VAT commissioner to tear through? The government is handing out the keys to some truly incredible growth, but they've wired the entire system with an ironclad digital tripwire. Make sure your paperwork is flawless before you step through that door. And that wraps up our explainer for today.